Welcome to Two Witness Teaching Program. Two Witness, a Bible teaching program to change and transform people. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Let's dive into it.
Chapter 12. Let's go to verse 2. Joash did that which was right in the sight of the Lord all his days, wherein Jehoiada the priest instructed him. So as the king, the young man king, listened to the priest, he did that which was right. And the people were blessed. But verse 3, not ultimately everything was done that should have been done. The high places were not taken away, and the people still sacrificed burnt incense in the high places to other gods. In chapter 12, we see Joash commissioned repairs to the temple, and they eventually got done. Let's go to verse 17. Hazael, king of Syria, went up and fought against Gath and took it. And Hazael set his face to go up against Jerusalem. And Joash, king of Judah, took all the hallowed things of Jehoshaphat, and Jehoram and Ahaziah, his fathers, kings of Judah, had dedicated, and his own hallowed things, and all the gold that was found in the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and sent it to Hazael, king of Syria, and he went away from Jerusalem. And the rest of the acts of Joash, and all that he did, are they not written in the books of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And his servants arose and made a conspiracy, and slew Joash in the house of Millo, which goeth down to Selah. So Joash is killed by his own servants, perhaps as a result of giving away all the treasures that were in his father's house. Chapter 13, Jehoahaz rules over Israel. He's an evil king. He did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. Syria comes against Israel again, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he delivered them into the hand of Hazael, king of Syria, and into the hand of Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael, all their days. Verse 4, Jehoahaz besought the Lord, and the Lord hearkened unto him, for he saw the oppression of Israel, because the king of Assyria oppressed them. And the Lord gave Israel a Savior, so that they went out from under the hand of the Syrians, and the children of Israel dwelt in their tents, as before time. Still they continue in their sins. Nevertheless they departed not from the sins of the house of Jeroboam, who made Israel to sin, but walked therein, and there remained the grove in Samaria. So we see Israel is humbled here in verse 7. Syria takes of their horsemen and chariots, footmen. Verse 9, Joash in Israel begins to reign, and he's an evil king. He did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He departed not from all the sins of Jeroboam. Let's go down to verse 14. Now Elisha was fallen sick of the sickness whereof he died. And here we need to understand the word used here for sick, which is klata, which means tired, worn, or weary. And Elisha was an old man. And this is how the saints, the Old Testament saints, died. They grew very old and weak, and their bodies wore out. And Joash, the king of Israel, came down unto him, and wept over his face, and said, O my father, the chariot of Israel, and the horsemen thereof. And this is the same thing that was said of Elijah in chapter 2, verse 12. And then we see in verse 20 that Elisha died, and they buried him. As they go to bury him, Elisha's bones revive a dead man. It came to pass, verse 21, as they were burying a man, that behold, they spied a band of men, and they cast the man into the sepulchre of Elisha. And when the man was let down and touched the bones of Elisha, he revived and stood up on his feet. So God's showing a miracle even after Elisha's death. A dead man was placed in the same place where Elisha was, touched his bones, and this dead man came back to life. Verse 22, but Hazael, king of Syria, opposed Israel all the days of Jehoahaz, and the Lord was gracious unto them, and had compassion upon them, and had respect unto them, because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and would not destroy them, neither cast he them from his presence as yet. That is a characteristic that he has, and his mercy is so great that it's beyond even what we can imagine what someone would extend. Chapter 14, Amaziah begins to reign in Judah. He's a good king. Verse 3, he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, yet not like David his father. He did according to all things as Joash his father did. Howbeit the high places were not taken away. And yet the people did sacrifice and burn incense on the high places. So he didn't remove all the false religions as he should have. And it came to pass, as soon as the kingdom was confirmed in his hand, that he slew his servants which had slain the king his father. But the children of the murderers he slew not, according unto that which was written in the book of the law of Moses, wherein the Lord commanded, saying, the fathers shall not be put to death for the children, nor the children put to death for the fathers, but every man shall be put to death for his own sin. Very good. He knew this principle, and he did not put to death any innocent people. Amaziah, Judah, wants war with Joash in Israel. Verse 8, he says, come, let us look one another in the face. And Joash tells him this parable, and the bottom line of the parable was, why will you have me come fight with you? I'm stronger, and I would defeat you easily. And Israel does do that. Eventually Israel here defeats Judah, and Amaziah is captured. We see that in verse 13. Later he's released, verse 17. Israel takes Judah's treasure. Let's go down to 21. Azariah. So we just had an Amaziah, but now this is Azariah. All the people of Judah took Azariah, which was 16 years old, and made him king instead of his father Amaziah. And sometimes he's also known as Uzziah. He's a good king in Judah. Jeroboam is a king in Israel. He's an evil king. Let's keep going on. Basically, we just have simple statements of whether a king is serving God or not, whether they're a good king or not. And we have a reference here to Jonah in verse 25. Jonah the prophet is about at this time. So if you're trying to fit that into the timeline of the kings in 2 Kings, you see verse 25, Jonah the prophet mentioned. God's still trying to preserve Israel. Verse 27, the Lord said not that he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, but he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam the son of Joash. Israel has another king, but at the end of chapter 14, Zechariah, who's an evil king. Verse 15, again a good testimony of Azariah. He was a good king in Judah. He did that which was right in the sight of the Lord. Verse 3, according to all that his father Amaziah had done. But, verse 4, save that the high places were not removed, And the people sacrificed and burnt incense still on the high places. And the Lord smote the king so that he was a leper unto the day of his death, and dwelt in a several house. Let's go on to... We have some other kings mentioned here. Verse 10, Shalom of Israel, he's an evil king. He only reigns 1 month, and then he is killed by Menahem in verse 14. And he's an evil king. Let's go to verse 22. We see Pekahiah, king in Israel. He's another evil king. Pekahiah is killed, verse 25. And let's go down to verse 29, where in the days of Pekah, king of Israel, came the king of Assyria, and he took Ijon and Ebeth Malachah and Janonah and Kedesh and Hazor and Gilead and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and carried them captive to Assyria. So Assyria here takes some of Israel captive. And then we see Pekah killed. And Hoshea becomes king of Israel. He's an evil king and the last king in Israel. Verse 32, Jotham, he's a good king in Judah. He did that which was right in the sight of the Lord. He did according to all that his father Uzziah had done. But he didn't remove the high places that people made sacrifices and burnt incense to. So he allowed other religions and forms of worship. And verse 38 of chapter 15, Jotham dies, and Ahaz in Judah comes up, an evil king. Ahaz is an evil king. He's 20 years old when he began to reign. Chapter 16, verse 2. He did that which was not right in the sight of the Lord his God. Verse 3, he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, yea, and he made his son to pass through the fire, child sacrifice his own children, according to the abominations of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel. And he sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places, and on hills and every green tree. We see in verse 7, Ahaz pays Assyria for defense against Syria and Israel when they plan to attack. And Ahaz imports the Syrians' religion into Judah in verse 10. He goes to Damascus, sees their form of worship, and brings it to Judah. Ahaz changes the temple to be like that of the Assyrians in verses 14-15. And the priest obeyed, the priest at that time. Verse 16, thus did Urijah the priest according to all that King Ahaz commanded. The last verse 20, Ahaz has slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, and Hezekiah his son reigned in his stead. And here we get to have some good stories because Hezekiah was quite a good king. Chapter 17, Ahaz king of Judah began, in the 12th year of Ahaz king of Judah, began Hoshea the son of Elah to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. He did that which was evil. Verse 6, in the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah and Habor by the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, which had brought them out of the land of Egypt and under the hand of Pharaoh king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel, and made the kings of Israel, and of the kings of Israel which they had made. So here at verse 6, we have 640 BC, Syria captures Israel. The last king is Hoshea, and it was because of their sin. As we read a little while ago, God was not through with Israel yet. He was still extending mercy, but the time had come where he couldn't justly do that anymore, and he had to bring the judgment. So Assyria, God uses them to bring that judgment to Israel, and Assyria takes them captive, and that's the end of the northern tribes, the kingdom of Israel. Verse 13, we see that God testifies against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and by seers, saying, "Turn ye from your evil ways, and keep my commandments and my statutes, according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servants." I said these things. Nonetheless, they would not hear, but hardened their necks, like to the neck of their fathers, and that did not believe in the Lord their God, and they rejected his statutes. And they followed vanity, and they left the commandments of the Lord. They caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire, and used divination and enchantments. Verse 17. Verse 18, therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel, and removed them out of his sight, and there was none left but of the tribe of Judah only. But God's firmly laying this at the feet of Israel, saying, you're the cause, you're the reason why this judgment has come upon you, and why there is no more a nation of Israel, but now only the nation of Judah, the southern kingdom. Verse 19, Judah kept not the commandments of the Lord their God, but they walked in the statutes of Israel, which they made. But God has to keep Judah because of his promises to David and the promise of the Messiah would come through that line. Verse 20, the Lord rejected all the seed of Israel and afflicted them, and delivered them into the hands of the spoilers until he had cast them out of his sight. For he rent or tore Israel from the house of David. No more. Israel, the northern tribes, are gone forever. Verse 23, the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by his servants the prophets. 24, the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and he put his people into the northern kingdom instead of the children of Israel, and they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. So there's a mixing of people. This is the dissolving of the northern tribes into integration with the other nations. And there's a mixing that is accomplished through Assyria once they take them captive, and so there's no more any northern kingdom. Samaria became a mixture of religions and peoples. Verse 29, every nation made gods of their own and put them in the houses of the high places which the Samaritans had made. Every nation in their cities therein they dwell. They worshipped God in their own way, a mixed, polluted way, and Syria never returned to true worship. Verse 34, unto this day they do after the former manners. They fear not the Lord, neither do they after their statutes, or after their ordinances, or after the law and commandment which the Lord commanded the children of Jacob, whom he named Israel. And Israel had broken their covenant with God. Let's go on to chapter 18. Hezekiah, he's a good king in Judah. We saw him introduced a couple chapters ago. He did that which was right in the sight of the Lord. Verse 4, he removed the high places and brake the images and cut down the groves and brake in pieces the brazen serpent that Moses had made, for unto those days the children of Israel did burn incense to it. So he broke that brazen serpent and stopped the idol worship. Verse 5, he trusted in the Lord God of Israel, so that after him was none like him among the kings of Judah, nor any that were before him. For he clave to the Lord, and departed not from following him, but kept his commandments, which the Lord commanded Moses. And the Lord was with him, and he prospered whithersoever he went forth. And he rebelled against the king of Assyria and served him not. So Assyria took the northern tribes, but they couldn't take Judah, they couldn't take Jerusalem and Hezekiah. Verse 11, the king of Assyria did carry away Israel to Assyria, because, verse 12, they obeyed not the voice of the Lord their God, but transgressed his covenant. Verse 14, Hezekiah king of Judah sent to the king of Assyria, saying, I have offended, return from me, that which thou puttest on me I will bear. Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house, so he pays tribute to Assyria, but the Assyrians cannot overpower him and take him. The Assyrians try to make Jerusalem fear. We see in verse 19. Verse 20, don't think that Egypt can save you. Your God can't save you. Verse 23, they mock, the Assyrians mock Judah. 23, they're saying, if we gave you horses, you couldn't even find riders. How should you stand against our smallest force? Verse 25, they appeal to the Jews, saying, even the Lord is on our side. I come up without, and now come up without the Lord. Am I come up without the Lord against this place to destroy it? The Lord said to me, go up against this land and destroy it. So they're claiming that the God of Israel, the God of the Jews, has actually called them to come and to bring this judgment upon Jerusalem and upon Judah. So the servants of the king of Assyria, they threaten the people of Jerusalem. Verse 28, Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in the Jews' language, and spake, saying, hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus saith the king, let not Hezekiah deceive you, for he shall not be able to deliver you out of his hand, neither let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will surely deliver us, and this city shall not be delivered into the hand of the king of Assyria. Hearken not to Hezekiah. And they tell the Jews, verse 33, have any of the gods of the nations delivered at all his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? No one's been able to stand against the Assyrians. Verse 36, but the people held their peace and answered him not a word, for the king's commandment was saying, answer him not. Verse 19, we see what Hezekiah does. When he hears of it, he rent his clothes, he covered himself with sackcloth, and went into the house of the Lord. And he sent Eliakim, which was over the household, and Shebna, the scribe, and the elders of the priests covered with sackcloth to Isaiah the prophet of the son of Amos. Verse 6, Isaiah said unto them, thus shall you say to your master, thus saith the Lord, be not afraid of the words which thou hast heard, with which the servants of the king of Assyria has blasphemed me. Behold, I will send a blast upon him, and he shall hear a rumor, and shall return to his own land, and I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land. Let's move on to Hezekiah. His trust is in the Lord that he will overcome. Now therefore, our Lord, our God, I beseech ye, save thou us out of his hand, that all nations, all kingdoms of the earth may know that thou art the Lord God, even thou only. And God hears his prayer. Verse 21, God will defend Jerusalem. Isaiah says the Assyrians have actually blasphemed God in verse 22. Verse 27, God says they are now coming against him. God will do to the Assyrians what he will. And a sign to Hezekiah in verse 29 will be that people of Judah will eat off the land without laboring for 2 years. Verse 32, thus saith the Lord, concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come into the city, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with shield, nor cast a bank against it. By the way that he came, by the same shall he return, and shall not come into the city, saith the Lord. For I will defend this city, to save it for my own sake, and for my servant David's sake. And it came to pass that night, that the angel of the Lord went out and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. So Sennacherib king of Assyria departed and went and returned and dwelt at Nineveh. So God fights for Jerusalem, and the angel goes out and kills 185,000 Assyrians. And Sennacherib backs down. He has to turn back and go home. Well, let's go on to chapter 20. In those days was Hezekiah sick unto death. And Isaiah came to him and said, Thus saith the Lord, set thine house in order, for thou shalt die and not live. Then he, Hezekiah, turned his face to the wall and prayed unto the Lord, saying, I beseech thee, O Lord, remember now how I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore. So he appeals to God when he gets this verdict announced to him. He humbles himself before God. And we see in another passage that he had become proud, and this was his act of humility, that God could change his mind and extend his life. And you see his pride in 2 Chronicles 32, 24 and 26. I think we should go there. 2 Chronicles 32, 24 through 26. In those days Hezekiah was sick unto death, and prayed unto the Lord, and he spake unto him, and he gave him a sign. But Hezekiah rendered not again according to the benefit done unto him, for his heart was lifted up. Therefore there was wrath upon him, and upon Judah and Jerusalem. Notwithstanding, Hezekiah humbled himself for the pride of his heart, both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So the wrath of the Lord came not upon them in the days of Hezekiah. So we see Hezekiah humbling himself, which causes God to be able to make a change in his plans for Hezekiah. Verse 4, it came to pass, afore Isaiah was gone out of the middle court, that the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Turn again, tell Hezekiah, the captain of my people, Thus saith the Lord, the God of David, thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will heal thee, and on the third day thou shalt go up unto the house of the Lord. And I will add thy days to thy days 15 years, and will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria. And I will defend this city for my own sake, and for thy servant David's sake. And Isaiah said, Take a lump of figs, and they took it and laid it on his boil, and he recovered. And Hezekiah said unto Isaiah, What shall be the sign that the Lord will heal me, and that I shall go up into the house of the Lord the third day? And Isaiah said, This sign shalt thou have of the Lord, that the Lord will do the thing that he has spoken. Shall the shadow go backward 10 degrees, or go forward, or go backward 10 degrees? So like on the sundial, shall the shadow go backward or forward? That can be a sign that God will give to you. And Hezekiah answered, It is a light thing for the shadow to go down 10 degrees or to go forward, but to go backwards, the natural progression is for the shadow to go forward, but to go backwards, that would be a miracle. In verse 11, Isaiah the prophet cried unto the Lord, and he brought the shadow 10 degrees backward, by which it had gone down in the dial of Ahaz. At that time, Berodach-Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present unto Hezekiah, for he had heard that Hezekiah had been sick. And Hezekiah hearkened unto them, and showed them all the house of his precious things, the silver, the gold, the spices, the precious ointment, and all the house of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. And there was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Hezekiah showed them not. Then came Isaiah the prophet unto King Hezekiah, and said unto them, What said these men? And from whence came they unto thee? And Hezekiah said, They are come from a far country, even from Babylon. And he said, What have you what have they seen in thy house? And Hezekiah answered, all the things that are in my house have they seen. There is nothing among my treasures that I have showed them not. And Isaiah said unto Hezekiah, hear the word of the Lord. Behold, the days come that all that is in thy house, and which thy father hath laid up in store unto this day, shall be carried into Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord. And of thy sons that thou shalt issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away, and shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. Then said Hezekiah unto Isaiah, good is the word of the Lord which thou hast spoken. And he said, is it not good if peace and truth be in my days? So Hezekiah's pride, he has an ambassage from Babylon, and he takes them into the temple, the palace, shows them everything that he has, all the treasures, and in his pride he shows them all these things. And Isaiah says, you've shown all these people these things. They're going to come back here one day and they're going to take them all from you. Now we have chapter 21. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. He's an evil king in Judah. He did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He built again the high places which Hezekiah his father had destroyed. He reared up altars for Baal, made a grove, and did as did Ahab king of Israel, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served them. Verse 6, he made his son to pass through fire, he child sacrifice. He used enchantments, dealt with familiar spirits and wizards. He wrought much wickedness in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. He was provoking him to anger, so that the Lord would have to respond and bring judgment. Verse 7, he set up a graven image in the grove that he had made in the house, of which the Lord said to David and to Solomon his son, in this house in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, will I put my name forever. Neither will I make the feet of Israel move any more out of the land which I gave their fathers, only if they will observe to do according to all that I have commanded them. So God's condition was always promised. God's promise was always conditioned upon their obedience. They would have that land, they would have a temple to worship God, only if they obeyed Him. And we see already the northern kingdom of Israel had disobeyed, and they had lost their place with God. They had lost their land, never to be reinstated again. And now we see the Jews, the tribe of Judah, is also being warned this, that God said, you can only have this land, you can only have this place with me, you can only be my people if you obey me and you let me be your God. But they hearkened not, and Manasseh seduced them to do more evil than did the nations whom the Lord destroyed before the children of Israel, the worse than the heathen nations that the Lord drove out to give the land to Israel. And the Lord spake by his servants the prophets, saying, verse 11, because Manasseh king of Judah hath done these abominations, hath done wickedly above all that the Amorites did, which were before him, and hath made Judah also to sin with his idols, therefore thus saith the Lord God of Israel, behold, I am bringing such an evil upon Jerusalem and Judah, that whosoever heareth of it, both his ears shall tingle. God's going to bring judgment. We see in verse 18 that Manasseh dies. He slept with his fathers and was buried in the garden of his own house. And Ammon, he begins to reign in Judah. He's an evil king. Ammon is killed in 23. The servants of Ammon conspired against him and slew the king in his own house. Now let's go to chapter 22. Josiah, he's 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And he's another boy king, a good king in Judah. His mother's name was Jediah. Verse 2, he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, and he walked in all the way of David his father, and turned not aside from to the right hand or to the left. Josiah repairs the temple in verse 5. Verse 8, Hilkiah the high priest said unto Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. So they have found the writings, the scriptures, the books of Moses, and they found the law, what they should be doing. And Josiah heard that they found the book of the law. Let's look at verse 10. Shaphan the scribe showed the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest hath delivered me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king. And it came to pass, when the king had heard the words of the book of the law, that he rent his clothes, because he realized they were not serving God the way that God had prescribed. Verse 13, Go ye, inquire of the Lord for me, and for the people, and for all Judah, concerning the words of this book that I have found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that is kindled against us, because our fathers have not hearkened unto the words of this book, to do according unto all that which is written concerning us. And Hilkiah the priest went unto Huldah the prophetess. Verse 15, She said unto them, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Tell me the man that sent you to me. Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will bring evil upon this place. Tell the man that sent you to me. Okay, so report back to the king. Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will bring evil upon this place, and upon the inhabitants thereof, even all the words of the book which the king of Judah hath read. Verse 18, But to the king of Judah, which sent you to inquire of the Lord, thus shall you say to him, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, as touching the words which thou hast heard, because thine heart was tender, and thou humbled thyself before the Lord, when thou heardest what I spake against this place, and against the inhabitants thereof, that they should become a desolation and a curse, and hast rent thy clothes and wept before me. I also have heard thee, saith the Lord. And God is just. He doesn't judge the righteous with the wicked. And the prophetess here is saying, Josiah, because you were concerned, because your people weren't following me, when you found the book of the law, that you wanted to make the proper changes and reinstate serving God according to His word, that God is going to be merciful to you, and the judgment that's going to come on this nation will not come to you and will not come in your day. Verse 20, Behold, therefore, I will gather thee unto thy fathers, and thou shalt be gathered into thy grave in peace, and thine eyes shall not see all the evil, the judgment, which I will bring upon this place. And they brought that word to the king. Verse 23, And the king sent, and they gathered unto him all the elders in Judah and Jerusalem. And the king went up into the house of the Lord, and he read, see at the end of verse 2, he read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant which was found in the house of the Lord. He read that to the priests, the prophets, the people, small and great. Josiah reads the book of the law to all the people. So important that everyone knows what God wants and that everyone can then be obedient to Him. Josiah reestablishes the covenant with the people. End of verse 3, all the people stood to the covenant. Verse 4, he rids the land of Baal worship. He removes false priests from the office of priest in verse 5. Verse 7, he rids the land of all homosexuals. He breaks down the houses of the Sodomites that were by the house of the Lord, where the woman wove hangings for the grove. Those who were false priests were not allowed to be reinstated in verse 9. He ends child sacrifice in verse 10, that no man might make his son or daughter to pass through the fire to Molech. Okay. Josiah destroyed all the temples and the altars to false gods in verse 13 and 14. And he defiled the groves. He brake down in pieces the images and cut down the groves and filled their places with the bones of men. Now, Josiah did all this, and it fulfilled prophecy in 1 Kings 13:2. Let's read first verse 16. Josiah turned himself, he spied the sepulchres that were there in the mount, and sent and took the bones out of the sepulchres, and burned them upon the altar, and polluted it according to the word of the Lord, which the man of God proclaimed, who proclaimed these words. And this is in the grove. He takes bones out of men and burns them on the altar, which is defiling and desecrating the false worship of the altar that was to false gods. 1 Kings 13:2. See how this was prophesied 300 years earlier. 1 Kings 13:2. And behold, let's look at verse 1. There came a man of God out of Judah by the word of the Lord unto Bethel, and Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense. And he cried against the altar in the word of the Lord, and said, O altar, altar, thus saith the Lord, Behold, a child shall be born unto the house of David, Josiah by name, and upon thee shall he offer the priests of the high places that burn incense upon thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon thee. So there's the prophecy that the bones of those wicked men who had performed that kind of idolatry and false god worship, they would be burned upon that altar and defile that altar. Now this, you might perhaps think this raises the question, how could that be prophesied of Josiah 300 years earlier, that Josiah would do these things? Now, let's remember the example of Jehu. Jehu, he did fulfill what God wanted to have happen with Ahab and Jezebel. But he didn't give his heart to the Lord. So, we see that God can persuade someone to do something, to fulfill his prophecies, and still not force their heart to serve him. Jehu didn't serve God, but he did the Lord's bidding for a certain task. He did this task, and he became the king. And this can happen. God can do that in a providential way. He can force someone to do some act. But what God does not do is force anyone to serve him. So what we have here is a wonderful happenstance that the man that Josiah, the boy king, the young man king now, I believe, God had chosen him to do this, to fulfill the prophecy, but also he also served God with all his heart. So we have those two things happening together. God didn't make Josiah serve him out of his heart, but he prophesied Josiah would do this deed that would break down the altars in the grove and put an end to this form of idolatry. And it happened to be that Josiah also served God with all his heart. So that's how you can reconcile those things. God doesn't force anyone just to serve him from the heart. He may make people to do particular acts because God can do that and not infringe upon ultimately on their free will of whether they're going to choose to have a relationship with God or not. And yet here we see Josiah prophesied to do that. He did it, and also he happened to also give his heart to the Lord. Let's go down to verse 20. We're in chapter 23, verse 20. And Josiah slew all the priests of the high places that were there upon the altars, and burned men's bones upon them, and returned to Jerusalem. Then he reinstates the Passover. He tells all the people to keep the Passover, verse 21, as it is written in the book of the covenant. Verse 24, Josiah kills all the wizards and witches, moreover the workers of familiar spirits and wizards, and the images and the idols and all the abominations that were spied in the land of Judah and in Jerusalem did Josiah put away. And there was verse 25, like unto him there was no king like him or before him, that turned to the Lord with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses. Neither after him arose there any like him. So here's one that not only did what God had asked him to do, but he gave his heart completely to God and was serving him. Now, God still has to judge Judah for their sins and the people for their sins, but he said he wouldn't do it in the time of Josiah because Josiah had repented and was serving God with a sincere heart. Verse 29, we see how Josiah is going to come to his end rather foolishly. In his days, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates, and King Josiah went against him. And then the Pharaoh slew him, Josiah, at Megiddo, when he had seen him. Now this is unfortunate. We see this in 2 Chronicles 35, 20 through 24. Let's go there. The reason why God had not called Josiah to do that. He went out in defense of the Assyrians, and God was not with him on that. He didn't seek the Lord, but he presumptuously went out to defend the Assyrians against Egypt, and so he dies in battle, which is a sad but an unfortunate thing. Let's look at 2 Chronicles 35, 20 through 24. After all this, when Josiah had prepared the temple, Necho, king of Egypt, came up to fight against Carchemish by the Euphrates, and Josiah went out against him. But he, Pharaoh, sent ambassadors to him, saying, What have I to do with thee, thou king of Judah? I come not against thee this day, but against the house wherewith I have war. For God commanded me to make haste, forbear thee from meddling with God, who is with me, that he destroy thee not. So he's appealing to Josiah to back down, don't fight with me, don't try to defend the Assyrians. God has told me to go and fight the Assyrians. He's appealing to Josiah with even his God, saying, God's told me to do that. Verse 22, Nevertheless, Josiah would not turn his face from him, but disguised himself that he might fight with him, and hearkened not unto the words of Necho from the mouth of God. So God was trying to warn Josiah through Pharaoh Necho. In verse 22, it says that his words were from the mouth of God. And he came to fight in the valley of Megiddo, and the archers shot at the king Josiah, and the king said to his servants, Have me away, for I am sore wounded. And his servants therefore took him out of the chariot, and put him in the second chariot that he had, and they brought him to Jerusalem, and he died and was buried in one of the sepulchres of his fathers. And all Judah and Jerusalem mourned for Josiah. So he didn't take heed to the warning from Pharaoh, which was said here was actually from God, and yet he fought with Egypt with no cause, trying to apparently defend the Assyrians. God warned him, but he foolishly did not obey, back down. So we're back to 2 Kings chapter 23, verse 31. Jehoahaz, he then becomes king in Judah. He's an evil king. Verse 32, phrase we see so often, he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. Verse 33, and Pharaoh Necho put him in bands at Riblah in the land of Hamath, that he might not reign in Jerusalem. So Egypt makes Judah to pay tribute to them. Verse 36, Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign. Jehoiakim is another evil king in Judah. He did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. Now chapter 24, we come to Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon, which is going to be the judgment God is bringing upon Judah. Verse 1, In his days Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years, and he turned and rebelled against him. So Babylon controls Judah, makes them pay tribute to Babylon. Jehoiakim rebels against him. The Lord sent against him bands of the Chaldees, which is the Babylonians. God brings Babylon as judgment to Judah. We see this in verse 3. Surely at the commandment of the Lord came this upon Judah, to remove them out of his sight for all the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did. Okay, let's go down to verse 7. We see Babylon is becoming the dominating world power. Verse 7, the king of Egypt came not any more out of his land, for the king of Babylon had taken from the river of Egypt, the river of Euphrates, all that pertained to the king of Egypt. Egypt is going down in power and stature, and also is Assyria, and Babylon is rising up. Verse 8, Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. He did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. Verse 9. Verse 10, at the time the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, and the servants did besiege it. Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother and his servants and his princes and his officers. And the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign, and he carried out thence all the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold which the Solomon king of Israel had made in the temple of the Lord, as the Lord had said. And he carried away all Jerusalem, and all princes, and all mighty men of valor, and 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained save the poorest sort of people of the land. And remember, this was prophesied as the judgment that's going to come to Judah. It was given to Hezekiah. You've shown the Babylonians all these things. Well, it will be that people that I'm going to use to judge Judah. So the last of the kings of Judah goes into captivity to Babylon. In verse 15, he carried away Jehoiakim to Babylon. Verse 17, Nebuchadnezzar places a foreign king, his uncle, over Judah, and he's an evil king. He did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. Verse 19. Okay, verse 20. For though the anger of the Lord, through the anger of the Lord, it came to pass in Jerusalem and Judah, until he had cast them out from his presence, that Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. Let's go on to chapter 25. I believe this is the last chapter here in the 2 Kings. It came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, and the 10th day of the month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his host, against Jerusalem, and pitched against it. They built forts against it round about. And even though Nebuchadnezzar had placed his king in Jerusalem, that king rebelled, Zedekiah. And the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. Verse 4, and the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between the two walls, which is by the king's garden. So Nebuchadnezzar defeats Jerusalem again. 5, verse 5, the army of the Chaldees pursued after the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army were scattered from him. They took the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon, and they gave judgment unto him. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him with fetters of brass, and carried him to Babylon. So here we see Solomon's temple is destroyed. Verse 9, he burnt the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every great man's house he burnt with fire. Here we have the judgment that's come upon Jerusalem, completely destroying their temple, their city, their walls, their palace, everything. And all the army of the Chaldeans that were with the captain of the guard break down the walls of Jerusalem round about. And we're going to see how that is all rebuilt later, Ezra and Nehemiah. Chapter 11, now the rest of the people that were left in the city, and the fugitives that fell away to the king of Babylon, with the remnant of the multitude, to Nebuzaradan, the the captain of the guard carry away. But the captain of the guard left of the poor of the land to be vine dressers and husbandmen. Alright, let's go to verse 22. Gedaliah made a governor over Jerusalem, over those that remained. God tells them to serve the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, as judgment. This was given by Jeremiah. Jeremiah's been telling them all along to do this, to submit to Babylon, go to captive. Those who go captive would prosper and be able to return and come back. We have a wonderful description of Jeremiah, that he's a free man when the Babylonians come and take Jerusalem. Jeremiah is allowed to go free. So God has really blessed his prophet among all of this. And that's what God does with his people. He'll preserve them, he'll protect them, even though judgment comes to a nation as a whole. He knows who his people are, and he'll spare his people from that judgment. And we see, again, as with Jeremiah, people were warned not to flee to Egypt if they don't go to the Babylonians and submit to them and go captive, and that if they try to flee, that they'll die wherever they go. And the people that fled to Egypt would never return, in verse 26. So, with the end of 2 Kings, we see judgment has finally come to Judah. God was preserving them, and he preserved them longer because of the promises that he had made with the Messiah to come through Judah and through David's line. And yet he had to bring judgment, so he used the Babylonians to bring that judgment to the people. They go captive. By the end of 2 Kings, we see that they're now in captivity to Babylon, and they're there for 70 years before they begin to return home and are restored to their nation, and God allows them to rebuild their city and reestablish their worship there.